Everybody, we must be one. Everybody, we must be one.
Hello, I'm Michaela Hughes, and you're listening to the Hughes Roundtable. This is just a quick reminder that if you're interested in listening to our previous episodes, you can find us on YouTube under the Hughes Roundtable. And remember to subscribe so you can be the first to hear our new episodes.
Thank you so much for joining us. Today, we are here with a very special and dear friend of mine, and her name is Luanda Daniels Taylor. Welcome, Luanda.
Thank you so much for having me.
She is going to share her testimony today. And as always, we thank you so much for listening. And as you listen, listen well so that what will be into your ear today, that you will be able to know that Jesus is real. So I want to share a little bit about my friend today, about how my husband and I came to know her through church and being in the choir together. And we were going to Zanesville, I think, to sing. And at that particular time, she was in need of a ride. And I think, were you pretty new to the church then?
Started.
Okay. And she said that the Lord told her to ask us if she could have a ride. And we said, sure. So we went, and the ministry there that evening was wonderful. And then on the way back, Luanda started to share a little bit of her testimony to us about where she came from and how the Lord had blessed her and watched over her. And then Michael and I had shared a little bit about where we came from. And Michael was saying to Luanda, he said, boy, you was out there in them streets, wasn't you? He said, you might have sold some stuff to me. And Luanda said, man, don't say that. But it's wonderful to be able to come from a place that was once common, that was no good, and now be in a place, and I don't even want to call Christ common, but a place of understanding, and be there and know where you came from and where you are now, and be able to share that.
Absolutely.
Though we may not have known each other in the streets, we still knew what was going on and what we were doing, but no longer there, but able to share Christ and know one another now. So I'll let you go ahead and share your story.
Thank you so much. And like you said, just to piggyback off of that, how we met, that's the one thing that has been so wonderful about transitioning into the kingdom is looking back at your life and seeing where God brought you from, and then to have people who were out there too, and now you can fellowship on this side of things. You know what I'm saying? And you see like, wow. And I think you and I were talking about it the other day, how God could have allowed us to die where we were. And then we would have been lost forever. But for him to just be able to keep us and cover us, his hands has been on our lives from the beginning of time. And even when we didn't know it, even when we weren't acknowledging him as our Lord and Savior, he still was watching over us. He still had us covered, and we had no idea of where he was going to bring us to. And look at what he's done. Look how far he's brought us. And his hand is still on our lives. And I know I'm going to start getting my testimony, but just praising him right now for just knowing that, always knowing that his hand is on our lives, because we don't know what the future looks like. We don't know what all he has in store for us. We have dreams and aspirations and all that stuff, but the way to get there, we don't know. But we have to continue to remember that he's been with us all the time, and he will always be with us. He will never leave us or forsake us. He knows the beginning to the end. And if we just continue to put our trust in him, we can't do anything but win. Because we're going with God.
We've got it.
Surely goodness and mercy shall follow us all the days of our lives. So I'm grateful that his hands of protection, his love, his mercy, and his grace follows me everywhere I go. And he will until the end. So, amen.
Amen. That's all right.
We get
that's
started
what
early.
Okay. Praise him. Hey, that's what it's all about, because if he had not done it, we wouldn't be able to talk about the Lord in this way.
Right.
Where we know for sure
right.
that it had to be him.
Had to be him.
And that's the way he wants it.
Yeah.
That I get the credit for this. Me, God, not you.
Mm-hmm.
You thinking your boys had your back, this, that, and the other, and
Right.
everybody. No, even in that, God was watching out
Absolutely.
to make sure that we made it to the place where we are today
Mm-hmm.
and what he has for us in the future.
Yeah.
Nothing but God.
Nothing but God. And it's an amazing journey.
It is.
It's amazing. I would not want to serve anyone else.
No, no.
God is amazing.
Because this is a win-win.
Yeah. It's a win-win.
It's a win-win.
Yeah,
Even when
absolutely.
we down,
Yeah.
it's a win-win. You can think in the back of your mind, I love reflection of life, of where
Absolutely.
we were and what he's done, and how you, at that time, in that particular moment, it's like, this is a mess.
Yeah.
How am I going to get out of this? And subconsciously, we may be trying to work it out in our own mind, how we going to put our hands to
Right.
it and do it.
Right.
A deep, dark place, and we don't know how we're going to make it out. And then when we reflect on that, but he brought us out.
Right.
We got out.
Yeah.
And we know that it was nothing but the good of God that done that. So then we think about, as we move along the journey and we get to other places, and we're like, I don't like this. This is uncomfortable. It's not right. Not that we're not giving him glory and honor, but that flesh sometimes is going to have us to, we
have to die daily. Our flesh is always going to rise up. So that's why every day I have a scripture that I say every day. I am crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. Yes. And the life I now live in the flesh, I live in by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me.
Yes.
I have to remind myself of that every day because the flesh really will rise up and have you in doubt and in fear and all kinds of things. But you have to remember who you are and whose you are. Yes. You have to remember that.
Yes. All right.
So I was thinking, you were talking about that we made it and that, we're still here. And that just made me think about my past and where I came from. And I know a lot of us can relate that you can sometimes think like, why did I make it out? Because I've had friends growing up, because I'll just say, I was raised in the inner city, the lower east side of Columbus, Ohio, in the hood. I always tease my mom because she don't like to be us to refer to our neighborhood when we were growing up as the hood. She like, everybody got a hood. This ain't the hood, or whatever. She just don't like that, but it is. It was over there, Mount Vernon, Garfield area. That's what it's known for. But and I just kind of gravitated. We were raised Seventh-day Adventist, but and that's a super strict religion if you know anything about it. But so it was very sheltered. But as soon as I could figured out that there was a whole nother world out there, then I dove into it head first. And I'm like, I want to know what all this is about. What's going on out here? But the people that we grew up with. And when we became a product of our environment, we just kind of gravitated toward everything bad and, started hanging out with the wrong people. And I ended up dating drug dealers and then became a drug dealer myself. And but even growing up in that environment, there were people who I went to school with who were killed and who didn't make it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so, to just jump a little forward and look at my life now, and even just as I've been journeying through my faith walk, with God, I'm like, wow, there's people that died when I was in high school. People were getting killed and in shootouts and all kind of stuff like that. But you covered me, and it's not because I wasn't in those same places.
Right.
I was there too. Bullets been flying by my head. I've had guns pointed directly to my head. You know what I mean? And I was a gun carrier. So, if you carry a weapon, then you got to be ready to die by the weapon. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so I just, it blows my mind to think about how all this was going on and all this chaos that I was standing right in the middle of, and for some reason God saw fit to keep me. Why? You know what I'm saying? And when you think about that, I mean, even when you're in high school, if there's young people listening to this, you look around and there's students, there's your friends who couldn't handle what, high school. They've committed suicide.
Yeah.
They've,
Yeah.
some might even be in hospitals where they're, mental disabilities, and they couldn't handle the pressure or whatever.
Right.
But you're still standing. You're still there. You were able to deal with it and handle it. You gotta understand that there's a purpose for you being saved.
Yes.
There was a purpose for God keeping you in the midst of all the chaos that you were in. So whatever situation that you find yourself in, always be grateful and always be mindful that you were kept for a reason, and that God has a purpose for your life so that you can help somebody else.
Yes.
So I'm always remembering that. I'm always mindful of that. Like, God, you saved me for a reason. And the one thing I always say to him, like, I want to make sure that I live out the purpose and of why you breathe breath into my body. I don't want to leave this earth without doing what you created me to do.
Yes, that's wonderful.
So I will just go back and kind of a little bit. One time I asked someone, this is after I got saved and I started going to church, and I asked someone, like, what do you think I came from, like my background? And she was like, it seems like you probably went to some kind of Ivy League school and you were in a sorority and you can be a little standoffish, kind of like stuck up or whatever. I was like, wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Because that is so far from the truth. I completely did not come from that. Listen, my life is so crazy from where it is now. So opposite. I hated going to school. My mom would tell the story how she used to drop me off at school, and I would go in the front door and leave right out the back door, cutting class and, all kinds of stuff, and I had, I was boy crazy for the longest and just would do anything to just leave and go hang out with guys, you know what I'm saying? And I didn't graduate from high school on time, but now I have my master's of divinity. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
You think about something
Yes.
like that? Like,
Yes.
so just how God can transition your life and turn it from it looks like one thing and it turn it into something completely different. But just going through all of that, I, like I said, I started dating drug dealers, and then started selling drugs myself. And I was a completely different person. I was hateful. I was mean. And I didn't care about people's lives. I didn't care whether you lived or died. I would carry guns all the time. This one particular guy that I was dating for the longest, we lived in Chicago. He wasn't from here. And we would go back and forth taking guns and liquor. We sold whatever. I wasn't working, of course. I didn't have a regular job, but my hustling was my job. So we would do whatever we had to do to make money for ourselves. We just lived that kind of life, and lived it for a long while, and put other people's lives in jeopardy. I remember when we would have all this paraphernalia and we didn't want to keep it where we were living. So I would stash this stuff over my mom's house. Like, what in the world? You know what I'm saying? And when you're in the streets like that, when you have that kind of mindset, you're not thinking about nobody else but yourself.
Right.
And so I didn't even think about my mother and my sister who lived there at the time. You know what I'm saying? Like, if the police would have come over there and raided the house, my mom would have been in trouble. And she had no idea what was going on. No clue. And so just living that kind of fast life for the longest, and seeing people get shot, seeing people get killed, different things like that. And my brother was even, he's deceased now, but he was into drugs for a long time. And and that didn't even deter me from living that kind of life, because I would see him. He smoked crack. And to see him, on drugs, we had to bail him out a couple times with the rival drug dealers that he was dealing with, you know what I mean? Because he owed them money or whatever. But to even see that didn't deter me from, because I believe that your mind, you just have given your mind over to the darkness, you know what I mean? And so you can't see the light. I remember one time though, and this is one one thing that I'm so grateful of is that I had a praying mother.
Yes.
And my mother, she never stopped praying for me and my sisters, or my brother. She never stopped praying for us. And I was at the place where I lived with the guy that I was with at the time. And this is one time when I almost came to my senses during all of this. And I was sitting at the table, kind of like, a table like this. And we had just cooked up some crack on the stove, and he left me with a bag. I had my gun on the table and a bag of crack because I was going to wait for the customers to come to the house, to the back door. We would sell. Some of the customers could come to the back door at where we lived, and then he was going out on the street to another spot where we used to sell. And so so I'm sitting at the table. He left, and I'm sitting there by myself, and I'm looking at this crack. I'm smoking a cigarette and looking at this gun on the table, and I'm like, for 1 second, I was like, what in the heck am I doing? And I believe that was my mother's prayers getting, trying to get through. And I shook it off, and I was like, this is the life I chose, so let me just roll with it. And so, that passed. But I'm grateful for a praying mother, because I really believe that, her prayers is what protected me while I was out there, like that. So, life went on. We lived that life for a long time. And then there was a point when I wanted to get out of that life. And because I was tired of watching my back, like when you were out there like that, you got to watch your back from everywhere, like from every angle. You got to watch your back from the rival drug dealers. You got to watch from crackheads who's trying to, get over on you.
Yeah. Getting robbed.
Right, getting robbed. You got to watch your back from the police. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I'm just like, okay. And even I remember, because he and I lived together. And so I remember, at night, sometimes the helicopters would be going over. And I'm like, I'm waking up like, we had a plan of action that in case they came, that we wouldn't have the drugs in our house. But still, I was like, what? I'm tired of living like this. Like, I can't sleep good because I'm worried about, if we're going to get raided or whatever.
Right.
And so, I asked him one day, I was like, aren't you tired of this? Don't you just want to get a job, live a regular life? And, he had done it, that's what all he knew. So it wasn't, it didn't bother him. So I'm like, okay, we got to do something different. He ended up going to jail, and, he actually went to jail a few times, and but this one, I think it was the last time he went. When he got out, we moved to Michigan, where his family lived, and we were supposed to have this whole plan, like we were going to get jobs, and we were going to have a nice little regular life out in Michigan. And I was all for it. I'm like, let me go to work, because the one thing, and I still always give credit to my mother. When I started going crazy, around the age 14, I think that's when girls kind of lose their mind.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
So that's when I started kind of going crazy. But around at 16, my mother, she saw the evidence, so she was like, I'm going to put you to work. So she put me to work on my 16th birthday. So she was like, I don't care. We ain't having no party. You going to work. So she put me to work on my 16th birthday. So I'm saying that because that work ethic was instilled in me early. So when it was time for me where I wanted to go back to work, I'm like, I know how to do that. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I went back to work, and when we moved away, and he was like, he kind of tried to be on board, but it wouldn't work. It didn't work for him. He couldn't live that paycheck, waiting for your paycheck to come. I want to buy something. I want it now. So he went back out there to, get the fast money. So now he and I, because we used to be like Bonnie and Clyde, we was on the same page. We, ride or die. We, whatever you doing, I'm doing, that kind of mentality. That's, what I had. And then, so when I started having a different mindset, like I want to do something different, then we started bumping heads. And so that's when our relationship got violent, and he started putting his hands on me. So me being in Michigan, I was by myself. I didn't have no family there. Just his family was there. And I was being prideful because, of course, my family told me not to go in the first place. Yeah. And I didn't listen. So now I'm like, I can't go back. Like, y'all were right, you know. Pride is something else, ain't it?
Yes.
So, you know, I stayed there for a while, tried to deal with it. It just got worse and worse. And so I finally got up the courage, like, I don't care. I'm just going home. And my mom, you know, she let me come back. And so I moved back home with her. And but then, lo and behold, here he come, you know, calling and begging. And, well, I'm moving back there, too. You know, you back, just find us an apartment. And I'm going to move back with you. I'm coming. I'm getting a U-Haul. I'm bringing all of our stuff and all this stuff. So I don't know how long it took. It wasn't long at all. But here he come. And I ended up getting us an apartment. And I, you know, I'll say this to women who are in domestic violence situations. If you get the courage to leave, stay gone. Don't go back. I know it's hard, but you have to find some help. You have to find somebody who can be sure to keep you accountable to your decision to leave.
Yeah.
Because our minds are not in a place where we can be rational about the situation, because, you know, they have manipulated our minds in, you know, certain different kinds of ways. So we're not capable to making a sound decision on our own. So please find somebody who you can be accountable to when you say, I've had enough, and so that they can keep you in that place of not going back.
That's good.
But I went ahead and let him, you know, got back together with him. And then, you know, the relationship was still abusive, and verbally and everything. I've said before that, you know, I got called out my name so much that I thought my name started with the letter B at a certain time, a point in my life. I remember even when we were in Michigan, and I hated being there, and I used to try to think about different ways, like, how can I was thinking about how to get out of there, because the other reason why I didn't leave so quickly is because he was kind of crazy, and I was afraid of what he would do to my family trying to get to me, you know. And so I would be trying to think of ways to get out of there. And then I used to try to think of ways, how can I take him out and not get away with it. I was thinking about that. Yeah. And then I even hated waking up in the morning. I used to go to sleep and wake up in the morning and be disappointed that I was here. Like, I'm still here. Like, why didn't you just take me in my sleep? You know what I mean? Because I was that miserable. And so when I, you know, fast forwarding back to us being here, there was one time that he put his hands on me, and it is something that has scarred me for the rest of my life. Of course, all the memories of that scar you of being in that type of relationship. But physically, there was a time when he got upset with me about something, and didn't let on until we got home. And my sister, she used to be a hairdresser, so I was her guinea pig. So she would always do my hair in these little certain different styles, and I had a lot of hair, and so she loved doing different styles on me, and I was her like advertising. You know, she would use me as her advertisement. But she had just done my hair in this French roll, and we were at our place, and he was upset. I forget, you know, the details about everything. It doesn't matter, because there's no reason. Like, you know, and I hear this, and I know you all probably have. If someone is in an abusive relationship and the woman, and they're like, well, what did you do? It doesn't matter what you did.
Right.
It doesn't matter. I mean,
no, you're not a punching bag.
You're not a punching bag. So he, you know, is upset. That's why I don't hardly ever go into detail about what he was upset about. It doesn't matter, because there's no reason for you to put your hands on a woman like that. Right. So anyway, he ended up grabbing me by my hair, and he started dragging me through the house and snatching it out of my head. And so it was just, I can remember it like it was yesterday. It was a horrible scene, and he's just constantly snatching it out, and I'm like, you know, all over the floor or whatever. And so it finally, ended with him grabbing a gun, and he turned it on himself, and he turned it on me, then he turned it on himself. And then I'm like, I was able to talk him down and calm him down where nobody got hurt, like, shot that night. And he ended up leaving. But that situation really changed me. My sister said, because she was a hairstylist, and I was grateful for that, because she would close down her shop sometimes, and I would go in, after it happens, and she would try to help, fix my hair to where what you couldn't see that and all that stuff. And even try different treatments to get my hair to grow back and all that. And she said that when we were sitting there, and she was, she said, I cried about it for a little bit. And she said she just was like, are you okay? And she said, I just kind of cleaned myself up and just was like, I'm fine. And she said, my whole countenance changed. And I kind of was never the same after that. She just, and I guess, and I know that I have been the type of person who wouldn't allow myself to feel things. I'm not very feely, and that's what my husband now, he says I don't have tear ducts because I don't cry that often. But I don't know, I feel like that was a learned behavior, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Especially, and not only that, there's so many, like, this is just a portion of my testimony that I'm sharing today. There's so many different other things that has happened throughout my life that has caused me to have, that hardened my heart. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
A lot of decisions that I made when growing up, and then I also, my family, we didn't deal with issues head on. It was always like sweep stuff under the rug and act like they didn't happen. So, that's just how I lived my life. Like, even if I did something that I regretted, I would be like, okay, let me just pretend like that didn't happen. My sister used to always say, you would go to make believe land in a minute. And I don't know if y'all ever used to watch Mr. Rogers and King Friday Land and all that. I'll be going to King Friday in a minute. Like, let's just pretend that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And so it's just a lot of things that I have had to soldier up on, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to walk around crying and being all sappy and sad about this. I'm just going to act like it didn't happen, and I'm going to keep it moving. And so I'm just saying that's not a great coping mechanism, but I know it's a common one.
Yes.
That a lot of people build for themselves. But it takes a lot to break that down, and at some point in your life you're going to have to get it broken down. You're going to have to deal with those issues.
Yes.
So so going through all of that, I want to get to there. Like I said, there's a whole lot more that I could say. And if you guys have any questions to ask me about anything, I will answer. But I know that going through that had put me in a mindset of, like, I've had this horrible life and I've made such a mess of it. You know what I'm saying? Not just of what, that section of when I was going through the domestic violence and all that stuff, but the selling drugs and the being promiscuous. I got that whole testimony. You know what I'm saying? And just, I'm going to share this too about that part of my life real quick is, when I was growing up, as a teenager, before I, got all out there in the streets, I would, at first, I wanted to be liked a lot, by boys. So I just got boy crazy, and, I was, made some bad decisions and lost my virginity at an early age, way earlier than I should have, and, then I would watch my dad. My dad was, I was a daddy's girl. I love my dad with all my heart, but Papa was a Rolling Stone, and like I have 27 brothers and sisters. So yeah, but I would see him, come home and and he took care of the family and whatever, bring money in or whatever. But he was doing his thing on the side, and I knew what he was doing. And my mom, bless her heart, she was just the doting wife, and taking care of him, and and all that stuff. And I would just look back. I mean, I sit back and watch it, like, he out here just creeping, and she don't got no clue. You know what I mean? But I see it, and I would watch her and say, and I said this out loud at that time to myself, and I said, I will never be her. And I never wanted to turn into that wife that was just sitting at home waiting on her husband to get home while he out creeping with whoever else, Susie, Jane, and Mary. You know what I mean? And I'm at home acting like everything is okay, or being none the wiser. You know what I'm saying? So instead of turning into her, I turned into my dad. And I began to have those kind of relationships with men, and I treated my relationships with men like, they were just whatever. You know what I mean? And I didn't value myself, and I didn't value relationships at all. It was just, I did whatever I wanted to do. You know what I'm saying? And that, that caused me to have a lot of regret of having so many different relationships with men and things like that. So I lived a life of regret for a long time, because I'm like, I've made so many bad decisions. I have so much regret, of all these decisions that I made. But then I learned how to ignore it, because I didn't want to feel that. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to think about my past. I don't want to think about what I've done. I just want to keep it moving. And even me saying that vow about, in going back to those relationships, and I didn't care what status the men were in, as far as like if they were married or single or dating, it didn't matter. So I ended up being a mistress oftentimes too, was dating married men and couldn't care less. You know what I mean? Like, that's not my problem that you're married. You know what I'm saying? Because if I'm the other woman, at least I know my position. The wife is the one who's dumb and don't know that you're, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And that's who my mom, I thought, that's what it looked like she was to me. She was the wife who didn't know what was going on. I wasn't going to be her, but I'm okay being the other woman, because I know what's going on. I know who I am. And that is a crazy way to think, but that's where my mind was. Yes. That was where my mind was at, because that's what I saw with my, how my dad. And so, yeah, it's a lot, you guys. It's just to share. But when I think about all of that, and then I think about where I am now and how God has truly turned all of that around, because now today I am a wife, I'm a stepmother, and I have been to school to seminary. I have my master's of divinity in general theology. I am a preacher, and you know what I mean? I'm a teacher. I have I'm over the ministers at my church. I'm a singer, and then I'm coming up to be an author. I'm writing a book about my testimony, and I'm able to minister to people out of all of that stuff that happened. I'm able to minister to people, and I'm able to relate to their situations. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm grateful to God that He allowed me to come from all of that and be able to now help other people who are in those situations and bring them out of those situations and let them know that there is hope.
Hello, I'm Michaela, and if you're listening, that means you've reached the end of part 1 of Straight Up. As always, we thank you for listening, and remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel to be the first to listen to new episodes. Be sure to listen to part 2 of Straight Up. Bye.
Everybody, we must be one. Everybody.